There are two kinds of shadows in Anime Studio Pro. There are the layer shadows, which are used to create an embossed effect, like we're working with cut paper or something and we want to give a little depth to it. The other option is a 3D shadow, where the program goes ahead and casts a shadow automatically into 3D perspective, but there's some things to be aware of when you work with that. Let's go ahead and draw a shape first, and I'll choose a star because it's selected. I'm going to Option or Alt-click right in the middle of the screen, right at the origin point, and then release the mouse. Now you find the 3D shadow options under the Layer Options tab, so you can either double-click the layer that you want to affect this on, or you can click the little ... which opens up the exact same window, the Layer Settings. We'll come to Shadows. Now here is the layer shadow, the embossed shadow, but here's the 3D shadow we want to work with, and it may have some unexpected results when you first begin with it. Something else I want to point out is the program is very specific in saying, hey look, this 3D shadow can be animated. Now to make this work though, you have to come over to the Generals tab and click on Allow Animated Layer Effects. The shadow will always behave and follow automatically what's going on with the shape in the scene without having this selected. However, if you want to animate any of the parameters of the 3D shadow, like you want to change the blur or change the color, then that Generals tab section of Enable the Animated Layer Effects has to be engaged in order to change these parameters and have that keyframed as well. I'll go ahead and click OK, and you'll notice that nothing happens. This effect happens to be a render time effect, which means you can't see it until you render the scene. This can create some issues, and I'll introduce you to another issue that might grab you from the very beginning. If we come down to our preview render, we'll notice, well, we don't actually see a shadow underneath the object, but we see something that looks like one right across the middle of the object. This is because the shadow is constructed in 3D space from the layer origin. So I drew the star right at the very center of this origin point. In order to cast the shadow down at the bottom of the star, I'll need to move the layer origin. So I'll come over to the Layers tool palette, click this, and I'm simply going to approximate the base of the star. I'll click down there. Again, we can't see any change because this is a post-render effect. So we'll come down and do a preview render. Now we'll see this taking place. Now what actually is going on here is that the program is doing a little extra math. We'll come to a side-by-side view. I'm going to grab my Workspace Orbit camera, and we'll cast this into space. And seeing what's going on now, this is our camera, our little eye in place, and then we can see how we're rotating around the scene here, just clicking and dragging. If I choose the preview render again, we'll now be able to see, yep, it's casting the 3D space all right, and that's great. Now here is the next thing to be aware of as you work with this. If we're going to animate this shape, and we want the star to look like it flies off of the ground or something, then what we need to do is actually move the shape, not the layer, and animate that factor, because if we animate the layer, the origin point is going to follow the star, and you'll get this shadow kind of careening through space, and it will look disassociated from the rest of the scene. So if we come to, say, this point and move our star up, when we do a test render, we can see this working right here, and the shadow's cast back in perspective just like you would expect. The shadow light is always cast from the Z direction, the positive Z. So X is left, right, the Y-axis is up, down, the Z is in and out of space. So I'm going to move this back right here, and we'll look at another option within the tab itself right now. If you don't want the shadow to appear directly behind the object, then we can go ahead and double-click our layer here, come to Shadows, and we can go ahead and engage the shear option right here. I'm going to give this a value of 2 and choose OK. Again, we can't see this, but if I choose a preview render, we'll now see that, yep, this is getting cast off to one side. If I highlight the scene right over here, and we go ahead and render again, you'll see that, yep, it's casting the shadow. So the skew function that goes on when you modify the layer is in effect kind of swinging the pretend light around to the left or right, depending on whether you enter a positive or negative value in that setting. So again, a very cool little tool to work with to create some artificial space into your scene. Works also with animated characters. So if you've animated a character in your scene, the shadow that falls behind the character will automatically follow the character's movements. Very nice little feature.